My sister-in-law said.
I put your baby in the freezer.
One hot summer day, I received a call from her. She had always been mean to me, so I thought she was making another nasty joke. My daughter is sleeping next to me. I replied, confused. My sister-in-law started to panic.
What? Then whose baby is that?
As soon as I told her something, she screamed on the other end of the line. After that, she rushed back to her parents' house and was left speechless by the horrifying sight she saw. My name is Lillian, 28 years old. I worked as a nurse. I met my husband, Samuel, who works for a large company, through a friend, and we got married. Samuel and I had a good relationship, and we soon had a child, living a happy married life. My parents' house was far away, but my in-laws' house was just a 10-minute walk away. I had a good relationship with my in-laws, who ran a restaurant next to their house. I admired my sensible and kind father-in-law and mother-in-law. However, the problem was my relationship with my sister-in-law, Melanie, who lived with my in-laws. She was 1 year younger than me. She had a fickle personality and couldn't keep a job, so her parents had her help out at their restaurant. For some reason, Melanie had been harsh to me since we first met. When Samuel and I went to greet his parents about our marriage, Melanie opposed, saying,
I object. Samuel can find someone better.
She reluctantly backed down after being scolded by her parents and Samuel, but her attitude towards me remained bad even after we got married. When I was 8 months pregnant, we were called to Samuel's parents' house. Melanie, who was in the living room, said to me,
Hey, haven't you gained weight?
Well, I have gained weight because I'm pregnant. I replied. Melanie laughed and said,
Carrying that big belly and panting. How disgraceful for a woman.
As I stared at her in shock, she started laughing loudly. If you stay that fat, Samuel will lose interest in you. At that moment, my father-in-law and mother-in-law came in, and Melanie walked away as if nothing had happened. It's natural for the body to change during pregnancy, but to say such things. I was secretly hurt and felt frustrated. After some time, I finally gave birth. After a long labor, a cute baby girl was born, and Samuel, who was with me, and I cried tears of joy. We named our little girl Aria. After being discharged from the hospital, Samuel and I decided to show Aria to his parents. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law were overjoyed at Aria's birth and had even prepared a lavish gift for the occasion. While we were chatting happily around Aria, Melanie showed up.
Melanie, your niece is here. You have prepared a gift for the birth, haven't you?
My father-in-law called out. Melanie's face immediately twisted in displeasure.
A gift? Why should I prepare something for a child she had on her own?
She retorted. I wasn't expecting a gift from Melanie, but her words still made me angry. Then, Melanie came over and peered at Aria.
Wow, she looks just like a monkey.
What?
She's super ugly. There's no hope for her future. Poor thing.
My mother-in-law quickly said,
That's not true. She's adorable.
and my father-in-law tried to follow up, but Melanie continued.
And she doesn't look like Samuel at all, does she?
Really? Her eyes look just like Samuel's when he was a baby.
My father-in-law replied. Melanie exaggeratedly furrowed her brows and stared at Aria's face again.
No way. Maybe this child's father isn't Samuel but another man? I wouldn't be surprised if Lillian did something like that.
I was too shocked to speak, but Samuel, visibly furious, said,
Go away! Apologize to Lillian first.
However, Melanie completely ignored Samuel's words. She turned her face away from us and left the house. Melanie's attitude is too much. Not only towards me, but also saying such horrible things about Aria. I muttered in anger after Melanie left. My in-laws and Samuel looked apologetic.
I'm sorry, Lillian. It's our fault for spoiling her all these years.
My father-in-law said. He explained that Melanie might be unhappy because my in-laws and Samuel had been treating me well since our marriage and because Aria was getting a lot of attention. Even so, her behavior was too selfish and childish. Although I was still angry, I could only nod as Samuel and my in-laws apologized. Since that day, I rarely visited my in-laws' house. Even when I did, I always made sure to be with Samuel or my in-laws to avoid being attacked by Melanie. Melanie would glare at me with hatred. Then, when Aria was 3 months old, while I was taking care of Aria at home, my phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Melanie. She never calls. I thought it was strange but answered the phone. What's the matter, Melanie? This is unusual, I said.
Oh, I thought you'd be panicking, but I guess not. Don't you have any maternal instincts?
Melanie said right off the bat. I couldn't help but respond. Huh?
I put your baby in the freezer.
She said. I couldn't understand what she was saying, and my mind was in a whirl. After all, Aria was sleeping right in front of me at that moment. Aria is sleeping next to me, I said.
What?
Melanie's voice sounded dumbfounded on the other end of the line, so I repeated. I'm at home with Aria right now.
Don't lie. You left the baby in our living room, didn't you?
No, Aria and I have been at home all this time. What do you mean by freezer? I sensed something was wrong and pressed Melanie for answers, but she fell silent. I could hear the background announcements from a shopping mall.
I thought it was your baby. Then whose baby is it?
Melanie exclaimed. At that moment, I remembered what my father-in-law had said. Come to think of it, I heard that a relative was coming to show their baby today. Just then, I heard Melanie scream on the other end of the line, and the call was abruptly cut off. I realized something was happening at my in-laws' house and immediately called them. When they didn't answer, I quickly grabbed Aria, who had just woken up from her nap, and rushed to my in-laws' house. On the way, I felt a surge of anger rising within me. Putting a baby in the freezer, what was she thinking? And she intended to harm my Aria. Unforgivable. As soon as I arrived at my in-laws' house, I took immediate action. About 50 minutes after Melanie called, I was watching the surveillance camera footage installed in front of the industrial freezer at my in-laws' house. Melanie came running at full speed. She forcefully opened the freezer door and screamed. "Oh." No wonder, as there was a baby frozen solid inside.
What should I do? What should I do?
Melanie screamed in a high-pitched voice as she took the baby out of the freezer and started performing CPR. But the baby, covered in frost, didn't move an inch.
This is bad. What should I do? Please come back to life.
Melanie panicked and started crying in front of the frozen baby. "It's useless. That baby is not alive," I said, holding Arya, as my in-laws and I appeared. Melanie turned her tear-streaked, snot-covered face towards us.
You were here. More importantly, do something about this baby. It's not breathing.
She cried. "This is the result of what you did, isn't it? You wanted my Arya to end up like this, didn't you?" I replied.
But this baby isn't your Arya, right? This is bad. I don't want to be a murderer. Help me instead of just watching.
At that moment, my mother-in-law stepped forward and poured hot water from a kettle over the baby. As the frost melted and the figure became clear, Melanie's eyes widened.
What? A doll.
It was a life-sized baby doll. It was so realistically made, both in appearance and weight, that it was no wonder Melanie mistook it for a real baby.
What is this? What's going on? I'm sure I put a real baby in there.
Melanie, still not understanding the situation, was staring at me. "The baby you put in the freezer was your cousin Lucas's child, Aaliyah. She was rescued and is now in the hospital," I said. Yes, the Rayal baby had already been rescued by me. When I arrived at my in-laws' house, my in-laws and Lucas were frantically searching for the baby. They said that while everyone took their eyes off for a moment, the sleeping Aaliyah had suddenly disappeared. I ran to the industrial freezer and opened the door to find the shivering baby inside. I immediately took her out and administered first aid to the pale-faced Aaliyah. Then I called an ambulance, and the baby was taken to the hospital with Lucas accompanying her. I received a report that she had hypothermia but is safe now, I said. Melanie, still in shock, muttered.
I did that to Lucas's child.
But soon had a startled expression.
Then what is this doll?
Actually, I had a life-sized realistic doll because I was trying to get certified in baby massage to help relax babies. I was the one who put it in the freezer.
Don't do confusing things like that.
Melanie glared at me with bloodshot eyes.
I thought my heart was going to stop. Why did you do this?
If I didn't, you would never understand the horror of what you did, would you?
Shut up. You were laughing at me panicking, weren't you? I'll never forgive you for setting me up.
Melanie screamed and tried to grab me. But my mother-in-law quickly stepped in front of me and gave Melanie a strong slap.
Ouch! Mom, what are you doing?
Melanie held her cheek, tears in her eyes, but my in-laws glared at her with red faces. Melanie, you tried to put my precious Arya in the freezer and mistook another baby. Isn't that correct? I said calmly, and Melanie started trembling.
If I had known it wasn't your child, I wouldn't have done it.
So, it would have been okay if my Arya had frozen to death in the freezer?
I just wanted to scare you a little. I thought you were nearby and would notice right away.
I glared at Melanie. Even thinking about putting a helpless baby in the freezer for a moment is insane.
That's...
Melanie couldn't say anything more, and silence fell, broken by my father-in-law.
Melanie, I can no longer consider you my daughter.
What? Dad?
My father-in-law's face was filled with anger, and his voice was powerful. Usually gentle, his rage must have looked terrifying to Melanie.
You tried to harm our granddaughter, and as a result, put Lucas's daughter in danger. Do you really understand what you've done?
No, it's not my fault. It just happened by bad luck.
Enough. We are cutting ties with you. You are also being kicked out of the house, and we will never help you again. Once this is over, leave immediately.
When I also told her that Samuel and I would cut ties with her, Melanie began to panic.
I don't want that. Please reconsider.
She pleaded with my in-laws, but they coldly rejected her. As Melanie started crying, I quietly asked her, "Melanie, do you know what Lucas's wife does for work?"
Huh? I forgot. What is it?
She's a lawyer. Melanie's eyes widened, and she turned pale. Both Lucas and his wife are furious that Aaliyah was put in danger, and they said they will make sure you pay for your crime.
What? No way. Does that mean they'll demand money?
Melanie asked. Yes, that's definitely going to happen. Melanie suddenly panicked, and then the sound of police sirens approached from a distance. Melanie started trembling.
The police! No way!
Yes, I reported it as soon as you came back.
No! Why did you call the police? I don't want to be arrested.
Melanie turned pale, collapsed, and tried to crawl away. I grabbed her by the scruff of her neck to prevent her from escaping. I will never forgive you for trying to harm Arya and for what you did to Aaliyah. Surrender quietly and atone for your crime. The police arrived and took Melanie away as she cried and screamed, "No," repeatedly. My in-laws and I silently watched her being taken away. After that, Melanie underwent a strict interrogation by the police and was given a criminal record for her malicious actions. She was also sued for $20,000 in damages by Lucas and his wife. Melanie sought help from her family, but no one came to her aid. Having spent all her savings on leisure, she had to borrow money to pay the compensation. As declared, Samuel and my in-laws cut ties with Melanie and kicked her out of the house. Melanie now lives in a dilapidated apartment that looks like it could collapse at any moment, working around the clock to repay her debts. Even hearing this, I couldn't feel any sympathy for her. As for me, without Melanie around, I am raising Arya freely. Recently, I've been meeting Lucas and his wife often, and Arya and Aaliyah have become close like sisters. I look forward to their growth together. From now on, I want to be a strong and kind mother and protect my beloved Arya.
How did you like this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.